your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. Today we have a new guest today. We have Professor Jim Black, who's the chair of the Business Economic Department of Johnson State College. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And this is Ben Kinsley, who is the executive director for Campaign for Vermont, and we'll be asking the questions today. So
fire away.
We're very excited that Jim's here. You've been a professor since 1987.
Quite a while.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about before and after 1987. That's a long time. Anyway, been teaching. How many kids is that? I don't want to know.
Thousands,
Yeah.
yeah.
So maybe tell a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I grew up in Portland, Oregon.
That's a good thing.
This is, for those of you that are watching, we are here on one of the rainiest days in Vermont.
Yeah.
This was what my life was like
In Oregon?
year-round in Oregon, Western Oregon. And so when you get to this point of this season, and it's June and it's or May, late May, it's still raining, you begin to say, God, we do something different.
Exactly.
A little sun up here.
I didn't actually know that about Oregon.
Oh,
It's just all rain?
Yeah, Oregon is it's a state that's schizophrenic. About 100 miles in from the ocean is the Cascade Mountain Range. Between the ocean and the Cascade Mountain Range, it is a rainforest. I mean, it perpetually rains because the water comes off the ocean. On the other side of the mountain is a desert. It's a high desert.
That's what I'm looking at in my mind. In Oregon.
Yeah, it's a high desert. So, you know, you drive through this rain and windshield wipers and all that, and you get up to the top of the range, you go back down there, it's dry, it's desert, it's sagebrush.
What happened?
It's nothing. Well, you know.
Cool.
So it's a schizophrenic state.
Yeah. So did you move here from Oregon?
I actually, when I finished my PhD, I was working for a telecommunications company in Seattle.
Right.
And they transferred me back to their corporate headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh, getting closer.
Yeah. So I was at Stanford, and I was, a corporate guy, and I started teaching part-time at UConn, their MBA program in Stanford. And I always knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I felt that if you're going to be a teacher, you have to have worked to know what you're talking about, rather than just the pure academic.
Right.
So that's why I worked in all different, I was everywhere from a first-line supervisor to strategic planner, long-range forecaster.
Right.
So I worked at UConn, and they offered me a full job, and so I took the full-time job. But it wasn't me. UConn is a wonderful school. I mean to tell you, it is.
I've heard a lot about it.
It is incredible.
Yeah.
Because it's between Harvard and Yale, you don't know where it is. But if it was in the Midwest, it would be tremendous.
Huh.
I was there, and I didn't fit in because the classes were 300 students.
Oh, my word. Lecture.
It was lecture. It was broadcast.
Yeah.
And I kept wanting to interact with the students and know them, and that wasn't the environment. So I started looking around, and I looked all around at a bunch of different schools, and so this job at Johnson came up, and I drove up here, and as soon as I crossed the border down in Brattleboro, I felt like this is home.
Oh, nice.
It was like Oregon in the sense that it's green and
Right.
it's kind of rural and all of that. And we got up there, and I went through the interview, and I thought, this is perfect. So, having had a 3 to 4 year job cycle all of my life, I thought, okay, I'll be at Johnson for
3 or 4 years.
4 years, maybe 5 years, So here I am,
Exactly.
30 years later, I'm still here.
Well, that's just a great school. I've taught Bill Doyle's class, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And it's a nice campus. Every time I go up there, I pass kids, they're always, hello, how are you? And I mean, everybody's so nice. It's a good campus.
It is, and the staff, the faculty, were all heartfelt about our students.
That's great.
And that is,
That's nice.
it is great. Graduation time, we all cry as they walk, we shake their hand, we cry.
Oh, well, they're all small classes, are they not?
Yeah, my biggest class was 28 students.
Oh, wow, great.
And the average size there is 16.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, I think every class that I've been with Bill, it's been about 15, 16 kids.
Yes, yeah.
So the reason I asked the professor on the show is because of what he teaches in Johnson, because this last campaign, all we heard about was workforce development, jobs in the economy. Not that they paid attention this legislative session, but that's another show. But I wanted you to come on the show to talk about our workforce future here, and I know that's something you've given a lot of thought about. And you started with Bill Schuldeis, CEO of Teddy Bear Company. He started, I guess, this Vermont Futures Project. And I just thought you could explain what that is and what its purpose is, because sadly, I haven't, until I talked to you about it, I hadn't heard about it. And I thought, that's very sad, all the work you're doing.
Well, I've been here, all these years, and we always go to these events and we talk about Vermont's economic future and what are we all going to do, and we all get together and we all sit around and talk about it. We have a big meeting and we all go away with our, feeling good, and then that's the end of it. And this group, the Vermont Futures Project, said, you know what, we really need to do something, and I'm not interested in talking, let's make it happen. In fact, they don't want the government involved in it. It came out of the Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, okay. So, and Bill was the president of the chamber. That's how that got started. Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense. Right.
So the idea is that we want to look at kind of the parameters of the state, economic parameters. Where are we? What are good? What needs improvement? And then address those issues. And the backstory is Vermont is really good at taking care of its its environment. I mean, we all know that.
I think we're number one or something.
We're up there.
We're really good at taking care of our people. We've got a social network that safety net is magnificent. The problem is we're not good at paying for it, and that's the economy. Yeah. So that's where this comes from. So I began working with this group. They came up to my senior seminar class, and we talked and interacted and figured out what I could do. And one of the things that came out of that was a jobs project. We're looking at finding ways to match up jobs with prospective employees, putting them together, figuring out what the educational needs are. So I began with a preliminary survey, and I went around my county asking people what jobs do you have into the businesses and all that. And you get the usual, there aren't enough people in healthcare, there aren't enough people in hospitality tourism.
Right.
But what shocked me was that their CEOs are retiring, and there's no one to take their place.
Wow.
This is a problem. 5 to 10 years from now, every CEO I talk to is going to retire. Only one of them has a replacement. And
that's really shocking.
Well, it is. And then I checked around. This is not just here in Lamoille County. It's around the state.
Huh.
So this is going to be a problem. And so we thought, well, okay, if you bring somebody in from the outside, there's not a Vermonter, there's no Vermont. Right. Okay, there's that Vermont culture.
Right.
And we see that they bring these people in, and maybe the person likes it, but the spouse doesn't. And so if you get people that are here that can progress through the company, then you've got somebody. So what we're doing is working with businesses to fast track our graduates in the business program into businesses and see if we can't fast track them into these better positions. Now the beautiful thing is that in the Vermont State College system, and I'm talking a lot, so cut me off.
No, please go right ahead. It's your show.
In the Vermont State College system, roughly 80% of the students that are in this system are Vermonters. Roughly the same percent stays in Vermont after they graduate. So this is a place where you're going to get educated people that will stay in Vermont, and that we can move them in. So what we need to do is make the match between the college graduate and between the businesses. And there's that concept that in Vermont there aren't any good jobs, and so people are not coming here, but there are. And what we need to do is make the case that there are, here they are, let's find them.
Is this what you were calling your Lamoille project? Is that
Lamoille Jobs Project.
Yeah, okay. Because this group of yours have two deliverables so far I can figure. It's the economic dashboard, and then they wrote a vision report. What's happened to those documents? Have you testified on them? What's sort of the content of them?
So that group was the Chamber of Commerce, the Lamoille Chamber of Commerce, has a group of up-and-coming business leaders, and the program's called Leadership Lamoille. And so they spend a year together, one day a month, looking at different aspects of the county, along with a project. And so this was the project, one of those there were two groups. One of them worked on that project. So they developed a organizational structure, and they did some research on what would it look like. This is not a document that's yet ready to go and be published.
Okay.
It's not something. I did present to the state of Vermont House on Economic Development on this project.
Oh, right.
So I gave them that, and so they know about it.
Is that called the dashboard, or is
Now,
that something else?
the dashboard, like a dashboard on a car,
Right.
what its function is to say, where are we economically in the state?
Oh, great.
Okay, so if you go to their website, they'll show you these, little needles going
Right.
back and forth. What we say is we have a highly educated workforce. We have a great place to live. The problems we have are that we don't have enough of a workforce, and that our people are very entrepreneurial, but we don't have an environment that is able to create enough support for entrepreneurs to grow. So I'm concerned about the lack of workforce. This is the problem.
Yeah.
People to do the workforce.
Right.
And
Well, that was the finding of the Vermont Futures Project, right? That we
Right,
had this
right.
10,000 worker gap.
Exactly.
And it's only going to get worse.
Exactly. And even though we're graduating all these from the Vermont State Colleges, that's not going to cover that gap.
Right.
All right. So ongoing, this is going to be a bigger problem.
Right. So, and you did this vision report. Was that looking to the future of what you'd like to see Vermont look like, or was it just a statement of what you're all trying to do?
So what we did was in our little microcosm of the Vermont Futures
Right.
Project, just look and say, what do we want in the way of helping our county get up to speed? Okay, and the vision is that we need to find primarily healthcare, education, hospitality, and tourism folks. Those are the three big areas that healthcare, education, hospitality, and tourism. Those are the three big demand areas. The others we want are the professionals, the professions, the accountants and
Right.
executives and things like that. Now, having said all that, of course, I'm from college and I do all of that, but there's another huge facet that needs to be addressed, and these are the trades.
Oh,
These
yes.
are entry-level folks in healthcare.
Right.
There's huge demand for that.
Right.
So our first task in this Lemoyle Works project, jobs project, is to put together a small group of folks that will hire LNAs, licensed nursing assistants. Okay, this is a entry-level position, $12.50 an hour. It requires a high school diploma or GED and some modest training. Okay, all the healthcare people around can't get those people together. They
Right.
can't find them, and they fight amongst each other to try to steal the employees away. So on June 6th, we're setting up a gathering of the healthcare people, of workforce investment board people, things like that,
Right.
to put together a plan that will find these folks that we can hire, that will give them the training so that they meet the state requirements, and figure out what their additional needs are and how can we deal with them. For example, the typical LNA is a 30-year-old single mom. So single mom means daycare.
Right.
So we need to figure out how we're gonna put this, because if you spend all your money on daycare, why go to work?
Yeah, right. And well,
Right.
that happens
Right,
sometimes.
right. So this is part of what this is about, to put this together, to figure out how we're going to do that.
Yes,
Do
exactly.
you
got
know
your
all this? This
hands
is going to be on
full.
the final exam.
We got it.
We're studying. So I know the dashboard was presented at the Vermont Economic Summit, but how involved have legislators been in this? Is there any pending legislation or talk about moving forward on trying to improve Vermont's workforce development programs and to meet that workforce gap that we know we have?
I'm just going to give you my own biased opinion.
Go right
All
for it.
I think that the state is not in a position to do this, and I'll tell you why. Because the state gets involved, it's got to have rules and regulations. It's got to have this policy and that policy. The state just can't go out and do it, okay? The thing is, when you start, and this is what I testified when I was at the House Committee, I said the problem with that is that you put policies and regulations in place, and then you're not flexible. You're not adaptive. You can't
Well, that's so
move.
true.
You can't move and shake.
Right.
And That's what we need. In fact, Shouldice said that at the Chamber of Commerce meeting.
For him.
He said, you know, you go and get state money, and they give you the money, and they say, here's the rules and regulations, and then the money goes away, but you still have the rules and regulations.
Right.
So I said to them, to the folks in the House Committee, I said, we don't want your involvement. You know, we'll do this because it's flexible if we do it our own. So we are being proactive. We're going out to businesses. We're going out to find people to do this, to match that stuff up. And we can be flexible. We're not required by rules and regulations.
You know, this just reminds me of after Irene, when the whole state was a mess and people just went out.
Just went out and did it.
Did it.
Yeah.
Roads were fixed and buildings were built and et cetera, et cetera. And we thought afterwards, well, once we get to the legislature, they're going to start knocking down rules and regulations. No. No, they didn't want to hear anything about it. But those roads are still, we were just on Route 4 the other day. It's in fine condition, and that was put up in like more than half of the time it would take under normal circumstances. They just did it.
Well, neighbors helping neighbors.
Well, there's a concept,
Yeah.
and we do that in Vermont.
And that's the Vermont way. It's always been the Vermont way. To rely on the government is not a good thing.
So when you're out talking to businesses, they must be concerned about staying in business, expanding business, bringing businesses in. They must be worried about that because we don't help. We're the worst. I mean, some of our ratings about friendliness to business is scary. We're like the worst.
Well, that's
true. Number 4 or something about
That's
friendliness to business.
That's true.
When you're out talking to them, aren't they frustrated?
Yeah, of course they are.
Yeah.
They're very frustrated. They don't see it as a helpful situation. They see it as a hindrance, and
Right.
all kinds of new rules and regulations keep coming out, which just make it more and more difficult to operate business.
You know, you said something before, which was like a light bulb went off when you said we do great in the environment. We have all these great social programs, but we have trouble paying for it, and that's the economy. When you explain it like that if they want the environment and they want the social programs, you have to have a viable economy to pay for it. I don't understand why our legislature doesn't get this. I mean, how hard is that concept? The economy is not the enemy. The economy pays for the things they want on both ends of that spectrum.
Well, if we had a healthy economy, we could pay for things like opiate crisis and Lake Champlain.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right, exactly.
Exactly.
I don't get there. I don't get
Exactly.
it. I don't. Anyway.
So looking ahead, what do you see as the steps to generate that workforce? You said that you don't see government as part of the solution necessarily. So what are the steps that need to be taken to meet that workforce demand and to grow our economy?
Well, my approach is to start small. I want points on the board.
Right.
So this little project of finding 20 LNAs and getting them to work and getting them job and getting it started.
Right.
Okay. Then we move to the next one.
And this is the Lamoille Chamber
Lamoille,
that's doing this.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Actually, it's the Lamoille Economic Development Corporation that's the fiscal agent for this
Right.
Lamoille Jobs Project.
Who's the head of that organization?
John Mandeville?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Got to give them a plug.
Yeah.
They do good work up there.
Well, they really do.
Always have.
They've been very supportive
Yeah.
of this idea, and they'll be the fiscal agent. And I have 3 interns this summer. They're going to work there on
Right.
this project. And one of them wants to be a full-time, she'd like to be the executive director of this jobs project.
Wow.
And she's going to graduate in December. She'd like to run this thing full-time.
Wow, how exciting.
So we got to generate some money to make this happen. We don't want to go and get grants. We don't, because as soon as
Yeah,
you do
no,
that,
yeah, you're right.
Your hands are tied
your
again.
hands
The
are
strings.
tied. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So maybe you could ask that the next question there, because I already asked that.
This one?
Yeah, we already went through the Lamoille Jobs Project. Now they know our secrets. We have questions.
So you're also involved in working with the telecommunications industry, strategic planning, long range forecasting, which you said you did in your previous life.
Yeah,
in the private sector. How do you describe Vermont's telecommunications industry from a strategic planning, a strategic planning level, and also opportunity for growth in creating that market and state?
I'm a blunt guy.
We like that here.
Lots of talk, no action.
Oh, amen to
Okay.
that.
So we all talk about telecommunications.
The last three
infrastructure.
governors have talked
We all
about
talk,
it.
we all talk about that. But the fact is that there is not the market demand to warrant these businesses, Fairpoint, et cetera.
Right, to do the last
to
mile.
invest in the infrastructure.
Right.
Right.
Now, really, it's very much the function of the state to do that kind of thing. You know, in 1934, we had the Telecommunications Act, and everybody got a telephone. Everybody in the country. The Rural Electrification Act, everybody got electricity. Okay, we need something like that. We need something like that here. I think, you know, the state of Vermont could put some bonds together to put some money behind this thing and then get it up and running.
Right.
If we had, I'm going to say this 3 times, if we had a really good, solid telecommunication infrastructure, we would attract businesses.
Yes.
Because people will want to come here and live in this rural lifestyle, but yet be able to work worldwide.
Right.
Right.
And if we had that high-speed access, people could do that. More and more people are working out of their homes, or they're working here and there. I mean, it doesn't matter where you work, and it doesn't matter when you work.
It's amazing sometimes. You know, a couple of weeks ago we had a guest from BNI, Business
Oh, right,
Networking
right.
International, and talking about making connections internationally. And there's a lot of people I talk to now that are, you know, working remotely, and they might work for a multinational corporation. You know, they work through the internet, and if they need to, we have an international airport that's, you know, gets direct flight somewhere, or at least a secondary flight away. You can hop to New York or Boston or whatever, and go anywhere in the world that you need to go for work purposes, and yet you can still function
Here.
Here. Yeah.
I have friends that moved up from Manhattan to Stowe. It takes them the same time to get from Stowe to JFK as they did from their apartment in Manhattan to JFK.
Oh, interest. Well, sure, with all the traffic down
You know?
there, right?
And now we have this Morrisville Stowe State Airport.
Yep,
That's, you know, I mean, now you're talking about 25 minutes
That's great.
from the
Oh,
airport.
do they have a shuttle sort of going back and
They're
forth?
starting that. We're meeting.
Oh, I didn't hear
we're
that.
meeting
That's
next
great.
week with a group that is interested in perhaps running
That's
more
great.
of a shuttle. Right now, it's you call in, the plane is, we've got a plane. You call in, we've got a plane. We'll pick you up and bring you up here.
Great.
So that works. And the long range plan is to put in their immigration stations so people can fly down from Canada,
Yeah.
go through customs at the airport.
Deal.
You know, so that kind of thing. Now all of a sudden you've got something really
Yeah,
nice.
serious. That's
Yeah.
great. I don't mean to change the subject. Oh, you know, in Berlin, we've still got people, what do they call when you like download or takes you forever to get copies and stuff on the,
On dial-up.
yeah, dial-up, that's the
Dial-up.
word, sorry. Thank God I don't have to deal with that. We have some people in Berlin that are on dial-up. We have a woman who lives, that's why we talked to Fairpoint. She lives up this huge, like on the top of the mountain. And she's an insurance agent and needs to have contact, and they can't reach her because they're like, we've sat in a meeting with, there's like 4 or 5 houses down here, then nothing. And they said it's just not financially viable to
Yeah,
get up
yeah.
there. So she has to go down to the library and do her work there and go back home because they're never going to build up there.
It's the last mile problem.
Yeah, but it makes sense. They're in business to make money. So to go to provide her this service would
Well,
be...
it's the same thing as like you know, city plumbing, right? They're not going to run a
Yeah,
water
right,
line
right, to
all the
me.
way out to, you know, the outskirts of town because
Right,
it's just
exactly.
not economical.
No, it's
And
just, you need money.
I
They
think
need to
some of
make
those
money.
walls are coming down though. You have this cell coverage keeps improving in Vermont.
Right.
You have 4G, you have 3G, speeds that are approaching broadband
Right,
cable speeds with 4G connections, and you know, unlimited data is now like kind of the new thing.
Yeah.
So there's opportunities there, you know, and the satellite technology is improving also. So I think
Well,
there'll
we
be
hope. Is there hope?
non-traditional
There's hope.
non-traditional
Oh, yeah, there's
options
hope.
for people.
Yeah, there's hope. I remember one time, this was years ago, but in Bolton, they had this huge group of doctors wanted to come up from Boston, big convention. Then they found out they couldn't get cell phone coverage. So for doctors, that's not so good. So they lost the business.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when we were talking last time, you talked about the kids and the cost of higher education, and they all graduate with like $60,000. It's probably on the low end. And you said you had some ideas about, because this is a big deal in the presidential campaign, about the cost of education. It should all be free, and the amount of debt that kids leave. You were talking about that you had some ideas about how to reduce or eliminate the debt burden.
The average student at Johnson State College graduates with $23,000 in college debt. That's around a $225 a month payment every month. 6 months after they stop going to school, they got that payment. That's for 10 years. Yeah. So this is a weight on them and their success. And that number, I had a student graduate 2 weeks ago who had $100,000 college
debt. Did they stay home with mom and dad? I bet.
He went here, he went there, and then he came to Johnson and graduated and accumulated all this different kind of debt. So that's staggering.
Yeah.
That's staggering.
It's a mortgage payment.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. But you don't get the house at the end.
No, exactly. You don't have any collateral there, except your degree, which is.
So he was exceptional. That was a very high number. All right. So how do we deal with this? Well, one of the ways the state of Vermont could deal with it is that they could say, you graduate from a Vermont State College. You could even make them graduate from Vermont High School. They go to a Vermont college, not necessarily a state one, but a Vermont college. They graduate from Vermont College, a Vermont college. They go to work. Each year they work, the government, the state of Vermont, will reduce their state income tax by a certain amount that will go to pay off their student loans.
It's kind of like what the feds do.
Yeah. Well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What a great idea.
Now, what the state, I told this to the economic folks at the state house. They all go, we're going to lose all this money. Yeah, sure, you're going to lose that money for 10 years. But by the end of 10 years, they are established. They're workers. They got families.
Right.
Now you got 30 more years of taxes that you're not going to get.
And they're building up their career paths so they make more and more money.
Exactly.
While they've got the experience.
Well, that's one of the challenges, of course, is for generations we've talked about this exodus of young people from the state, right? And you're going to lose a certain number, but you also have
Yes, you are.
But you also have all these students that are coming into Vermont. We import 40,000 students a year into the state through our college systems. We got through our private schools and our public schools. And those are kids that could stay here, a lot of them, work. And if you give them an incentive to do that, it kind of turns that paradigm on its head of we're losing all these kids, but not realizing we're also importing a lot of kids. We're just not keeping them here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I never understood why we don't take an effort. I've mentioned this on the show a couple times before. Go to the kids from out of state. They came here because they like the state, and if we could find out what they're studying, maybe we could find jobs for them. You want your kids, your own kids, to go out and experience the world. They'll come back perhaps when they get married and have kids of their own. Yeah. But why not go and approach the kids who personally picked Vermont to go to school? They like it here.
Well, you used an example earlier in the show of Johnson State is about 80% of the students coming from Vermont, and about that many stay after graduating. Champlain College is an interesting example because only about 40% of the students that are attending school there are from in-state, but 60% of the graduating class stays. So they're actually a net gain for the state in terms of number of students that are coming in versus staying. And they do that through internships. They have a really robust internship program that embeds students in, leading edge businesses like Dealer.com and My Web Grocer and others. I think we could replicate that at a number of colleges around the state and turn that university system that we have that's so strong in Vermont into a positive thing for our workforce and for employment in our job space.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. Absolutely. I have one particular bank, Union Bank in the county, in the state. Great relationship with them. We put interns in there, and inevitably the interns end up being full-time. I've had,
Oh,
I've
that's
had
great.
probably 24 that are
Nice.
down there or have been down there in the last 5-6 years.
Nice.
So you're exactly right. Internships are key. And the nice thing for the business is they're not obligated. So you come in, you be an intern, you can look the student over, you can do whatever you want, and then at the end of the time, you have no obligation,
Right.
which makes it nice for the company.
Yep.
Yeah, and
That's
good for the
great.
student. It's good for the
That's great.
student. Get out and get that real world experience.
Right. It allows the business to give the student a chance to show how valuable they are without the business having to take on the liability of
Exactly,
hiring them and having all the
right.
obligations.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So just back to that debt reduction, they didn't like that idea, the legislature? Because, no.
No. The argument was, well, we're going to lose all these taxes. We're going to lose 10 years of taxes. And I say, you sure are. Exactly right, you
Right.
are. Yeah.
Especially if they go another state to work.
Then you
They're
lose it
gone.
forever. You know?
Exactly, they don't
You
get
know.
that short-term
Well, it's the
return.
same concept as like what New York's doing with the technology businesses, right? 10 years tax-free.
Oh, people
to-
go crazy over that.
Right, and it's more of a selling point than anything, but the goal there is, of course, they're not going to just be there for 10 years.
Right.
They're going to be there for, 25,
Plus,
30,
they're
40
still
years.
employing
and-
employees, and paying them, who
Right.
are in turn feeding back into the economy.
Well, that's the other thing,
That's
is if you
just-
have those families there's a multiplier effect
Sure.
also. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We had, when you talked about bringing people in from the outside to fill some of these jobs, we were talking a couple of shows ago about how hard that is, because if that individual man or woman has a husband or wife, they can't find jobs in Vermont.
Yeah, right.
And that's always a sticking point when you want to bring somebody in, because they both spouses these days have to work. So,
We have that issue with Johnson. We've hired, 2 years ago, I hired a really great professor. She was just really great. I mean, star.
husband.
Spouse didn't like it. They're now in Texas.
Oh, there you go.
So what we've done, particularly in our department, when we hire somebody in our department, we go out and make sure the spouse finds something that's
Right.
meaningful to the spouse.
Yeah.
That
Well,
is important to make sure that the whole family is
Yeah.
supported.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was head of personnel in the state, we would go out of our way to make sure, same thing, make sure the spouse was well set, headed in the right direction anyway, to
Yeah.
find something,
Yeah.
So given that you are the head of a department, you must be involved with the merger discussions between Johnson State and Linden. So what are your feelings about the merger? Do you have any concerns? Do you see any benefits? And how are they going in terms of, picking a new name and all of that merger process?
It's moving forward. It's kind of, you got to get the picture of higher ed, right? All right, we in higher ed have been doing stuff for 2,000 years.
right,
That cap and gown that we wear, okay, this came out of the Greeks. This is a mortar board you hold, right? And it's a smock of a painter.
Right.
Okay, so someone comes along and says, well, you ought to change.
change,
Okay, let's give it a few hundred years and we'll see.
Yeah, right,
We'll see about
right.
it. Okay, well, there was no technology. There was none of that back then.
right,
So it's moving. It's moving, and some of us, my counterpart at Linden, we're wide open with this thing.
Right, that's great.
We are, in fact, aligning our curriculums. We're figuring out how can we deal with this and that issue, make it go forward, work it. The value of this combination is that it makes economic sense. It becomes, because we have upper level courses that are low enrolled. I have I have a federal taxes course. So I have 6 students in the course. That's not enough to run the course. Okay, they up there have 4 students.
there you go.
All right, but you put them together, 10 is enough to run a class.
Yep.
So what we've done is we put in a teleconference classroom where they can be at Linden, they can be at Johnson.
Great.
And we have one instructor who gives the course, and
Oh,
that works out real well. I've just changed my couple of courses of my curriculum to align with theirs so that we can use this and again fill these low enrolled courses. Beyond that, so that's an immediate cost savings benefit.
And CCV does something similar, correct? They have classes that are shared across a number of their locations.
They do. A lot of online classes,
Right.
Weekend classes.
Yeah.
I teach.
People
weekend
don't realize CCV is actually the second largest college in the
the
state,
state.
if you add up all
all
of
the
their
branches.
locations.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to imagine this Johnson-Linden merger probably makes it one of the largest in the state as well.
Yeah, we'll have probably about 4,000, around
Great.
4,000 when we get all
Great.
done.
Yeah.
Well, I've always thought that the K through 12 and high school, particularly high school, have lost a lot of opportunity for not using telecommunications. I mean, some of these smaller schools, I don't think they'd be having the discussion they did if they relied
did
on
that, if they did
telecommunications. We wouldn't be having this big argument about Act
Well,
36.
that last mile fiber discussion, right, was
Well-
a lot. You know, the early focus was on getting to schools and municipal
Yeah,
buildings.
they don't want any, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy.
Well, it works well, and the kids we have now, these millennials, this is the first now digital natives. They were born.
Sure. You're not afraid of it.
They were born with the internet.
Yeah.
You're probably a native, but you and I,
Yeah, no,
we're transplants. right?
Exactly.
Right. But it's okay for them. They're common with that, so the technology is not an issue for them. And they find ways, if this doesn't work, they find ways to get around it and get it done. So to start incorporating technology is fine.
great.
It's viable,
Right.
it's fine, it works.
that's great. So what's the future plan? One campus, two campuses? I guess it's hard to figure out. I guess it's in the details, but
It is, and these are the details people are still working on.
Yeah.
We in business departments are leading the charge. We are looking at right now having one department on two different campuses. Okay, and then it would be Johnson would have this specialization, Linden would have
great.
that specialization, but we coordinate with some of these courses that are low enrolled,
Right.
so that we deal with that.
That's great. You know how SUNY New York works. I have always never understood why we didn't follow that model, because everybody's got Johnson College and Linden and Castleton. Why couldn't it be Vermont College at Johnson or at,
yeah.
and then specialize like they do in the SUNY campuses, where they specialize in IT, specialize in business, and I would think just there must be savings in advertising and promotion.
Absolutely.
And in sharing faculty.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why that's something, that idea gets shoved aside too.
Well, I think the new chancellor is really doing a good job.
Jeb, yeah,
of bringing that together.
yeah.
It is now Northern Vermont University at Johnson or at Linden.
Oh, perfect.
The new
Well, the
name is
concept
Northern
is there.
Vermont
You
University.
didn't like Lyndon Johnson or something?
No.
No.
So
I thought, how cool was that?
so what we do is we combine a lot of the staff, a lot of the recruitment admissions folks, so that now they're working for NVU. And if you want liberal arts, we'll put you at Johnson, and if you want professional programs,
see, that's great.
you'll
I'm
go,
glad.
You'll go to Linden.
And you, all the state colleges do collaborate on some stuff. Like I believe, if I remember this correctly, coursework done at any one state college is transferable.
Immediately.
Immediately
It's right
to
there
the
on. It's right there on their transcript.
Yeah.
Huh.
So are there other ways that you coordinate with other state colleges, or at this point is it really just with?
Well, actually, we're meeting. All of the five colleges: Linden, Johnson, Castleton, VTC, and CCV. The department chairs of the business departments for all five. We're meeting on a regular basis.
Oh, great.
To find out how we can coordinate our efforts. And with CCV, they get the students in. How can we then migrate CCV students into
Right.
our campus?
Because
Terrific.
CCV is typically a 2-year program,
Right.
and then transitions
Right.
into something like one of the 4-year.
4 years,
Yeah.
right.
Great. Yeah,
So-
because that's an associate, isn't it?
It's
Most of
associate's
their
degree.
programs are
And,
associate. Yeah.
certifications?
Yeah, they're not. I don't think they don't have any bachelor degrees. Just right now, they're only accredited for associates or 2-year
Associates, right.
degrees.
So this would be a next logical step for many of the students.
To follow on.
To follow up, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And then they would arrive. I remember interviewing the chancellor at VTC, and that he was it takes them forever to get high school graduates up to speed to even take the courses, that they waste a couple of months up front to get them up to speed.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
this way, if you're working so closely, once they hit your campus, they're ready to
They're
go.
ready to rock and roll.
I
Yeah.
quite honestly think that our secondary education, secondary level education in Vermont really should look at CCV as a model, because they're able to turn out some of the best
Oh, yeah, it's a great
best
school.
community college students in the country
Yeah.
at a third of the price that our
Right.
secondary
Right.
education system
Right,
is.
right.
It's a good, and
Right.
I think Jeb will do a great job
He
down
will.
there, just as the overarching.
And this brings up a new topic, and this is the workforce of the future. This is the college student of today, very different than the college student of the past. When I was in college, my professor, I adored this guy, my mentor, would come in, slam the door, get up on the board, and write for an hour mathematical equations, and you were copiously taking notes.
Right.
And at the end of the hour, he'd turn around and walk out.
Whoa.
And it was lecture. It
Yeah.
was just lecture.
Right.
Okay, that doesn't work with today's students. They've got to have hands-on. They've got to be engaged, and it's got to be a variety of different activities. So the teaching that we do is very different than what I've done in the past. So I have projects, I have videos, I have them do activities, I have them give presentations, lots of different kinds
Great.
of things to make that happen. In fact, we have a concept called the flipped classroom. They study before the class, then they come in and do the homework in the class.
Huh.
So
Interesting.
that they're actually actively engaged in doing this thing. Now, I said that leads to the workforce of the future. What happens is then businesses are going to have to adapt to this new kind of worker,
Interesting.
because this new kind of worker is the kind of worker that, I consistently get emails at 2 a.m. Here's my homework. 2 a.m. they send me the homework. And so these students are up, or midnight.
Yeah.
They're up working at night. And then their hours are different. They want flexible hours. They want to be able to come into work from 8 to 10, then do a couple of runs on the slope, be back at 1 o'clock,
Right.
and they'll work till 8 o'clock at night.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So this mindset of the traditional business 8 to 5 is a conflict.
Huh.
It's a
You
conflict.
probably get them much more productive because, like in Europe, they've taken a little bit of relaxation and rest and back to work.
Back to
So
work,
it must be
yeah.
more productive, I
Well, I
think.
can tell you,
Yeah.
your productivity goes down when it's 80 degrees outside and
Yeah,
sunny.
you're looking out the window. Yeah, exactly.
So I think it gets to what we're using now in the higher ed called competency-based versus having you sit in the classroom for 37 and a half hours in the
Right,
classroom.
right.
We're saying we're moving towards a competency-based program that says you develop and demonstrate these competencies,
Great.
Okay, so for example, I teach a accounting class, financial accounting, and it's an online class where they interact in the computer. They will do a homework, submit it, parts 3-4 steps. The computer instantly grades it.
Wow.
So then they do 3 or 4. If it's wrong, the computer directs them. Here's where you go. So it's a flipped classroom. They come into the classroom. That's what they do, homework. Eddie grades it, and then I am their personal one-on-one coach.
Right.
Because I'm not lecturing, and they don't say, Jim, would you stop lecturing and answer my question? I have a question, I go over there, and I could one-on-one with them. So for those that need it, it works really well. Competency-wise, then you need to complete the course. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to complete the course, as long as, so I have a deal. I said, this is for 15-week semester. If you complete the entire course by the end of 7 weeks, you're done.
Whoa,
You don't have
sign
to
me
come to
up.
class, and you don't have to take the final exam.
There's some incentive.
Yeah, exactly.
I had one student come, he says, well, how about if I get it done before the semester begins?
Whoa.
Fine, I don't care,
Right.
fine. You do this, you get an A in the class. She did.
Oh, my word.
She completed the entire course before the semester began. So then she could
Amazing.
go on to the next course.
Right.
So
Wow.
it's
Incredible.
this
That's
kind of
awesome.
flexibility that we need to have. And it gets around competency based. It's not Carnegie units, 37 and a half hours in the seat. That's,
Right.
Well, and I think the workplace is also having different demands now. It's not about brute memorization and knowledge at
Right,
this point
right.
anymore. It's about how you synthesize that knowledge, because everyone's got a vast amount of information at their fingertips. You can go out.
Exactly right.
You can go out and find every statistic you need to know. You can find all the formulas to figure it out.
Exactly.
What you do with it.
It's how you handle that information,
Right.
how you synthesize that information, and then move forward with it. That's the skill that's really critical in today's workforce.
You're exactly right,
That's
and that's
awesome.
the future of America.
Yep.
You know, we do some specialized manufacturing and we do some things, but what you're talking about is where we lead the world, because we come up with the ideas, we put the concepts together, and then we broker out to different places to make the product or do the service system. But what you're talking about is the future of America.
That's great.
And it puts us, as always, at the head of the pack in terms of world leadership.
I love it. Where were you when I was going to school? I am a hands-on person. That's just who I am. And I always thought, why can't teachers figure that out about me? And I'll sit in the class with the hands-on people, and you teach me that way. And then
I'm
go
the
to
same way.
go to the lecture people, the people that just like to be lectured. It was a struggle sitting listening.
Oh,
Like, oh,
yeah,
really?
I know.
The word boring comes to mind.
Boring.
Boring.
It depends on the subject matter. Sometimes.
Well, that's true, but
Yes.
for the most part, you sit there and you get dazed after a while, because give me something to figure out, touch, feel, and see.
If you sit in a lecture, you'll retain about roughly 5%
Well,
Yeah.
that's right.
of what's being
I
said.
agree with that.
Yeah, you learn. Most people are more hands-on learners, especially
Yeah.
today when we're such short attention spans. You know,
Well, that's something else.
But it's now a cultural thing
Yeah.
at this point, right? Is that people don't have the patience to sit there and listen to.
They
an
listen to
hour
sound
long.
bites.
You want 3 or 5 minute sound bites, and
Yeah,
that's
right.
and
That's
about
right.
at that point is where people start.
That's why we
tuning
put
out.
the tagline on this show, "Listen beyond the sound bites," because that's all everybody knows is it's
Yeah.
free or
Yeah,
something.
right,
So anyway,
right.
all right. So we should move on.
Yeah, so we mentioned at the beginning of the show talking about socially responsible businesses. And certainly that's something we talk about a lot here in Vermont. We have co-ops, we have businesses that look at triple bottom line, like Green Mountain Coffee and Ben and Jerry's, and there's a bunch of others. I know this is something you've done some work on. Can you give us an example of what a socially responsible business is, how it operates, what makes it different, and what are the benefits of being a socially responsible business?
As you mentioned, the triple bottom line. So every business has to make a profit. They have to be profitable. Okay, so that's one of the three. The second bottom line is caring for the environment. How do you keep a minimal footprint? Okay, so there are lots of different ways to be green businesses and things like that. The third thing is, how do you care for your employees and the society? How can you make the life of your employees, make the life of society better? So, dealer.com.
Oh, they're great.
Okay, they have a program. If you want to be in a sports team, they'll pay for you. They'll pay for your equipment. They'll support it and things like that. Ben and Jerry's gives money away for all kinds of different organizations. Vermont is the leader in the nation of socially responsible businesses. I'm going to put a plug in for Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility, VBSR.org. That's the group that says, let's get together, let's make money, but let's also make the world a better place.
Right.
And we are 50 times more effective than California, for example. And so if you look at the number of social responsibilities in California versus here, percentage-wise, we're 50 times more.
Oh, good for us.
For us.
And VBSR is one of the strongest associations in the state. Like when you're looking at business associations around Vermont, VBSR
legislatively,
is
they're very
one of the
powerful.
strongest. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the socially responsible triple bottom line is a smart business thing. It makes money because employees, Google is the classic case of this. It makes money because employees these days aren't just happy working for money. They want to make the society, they want to make the world a better place. So if you create an environment where you can let your employees do something that's beneficial to society, they'll love your job.
Yeah.
They'll love
Right.
to come to job because they're doing good.
Well, Bill Gates was kind of one of the pioneers of that, right? He was the
Yep.
one, like the Blue Jeans CEO or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
the term
Right, exactly.
was for that
Yeah.
relaxed work environment. You know, you have break rooms with ping pong tables. You get
Exactly.
you get people to relax and like be flexible in their work environment and get them out doing stuff in the community. You know, I think is important, and Vermont does seem to be. It seems like there's a lot of businesses that really tout that as
They really do.
a Vermont quality.
They really do. And to find ways where and let your employees come up with the idea.
Right.
You
No,
know,
Right.
that's so important.
You
to
come
have
up
them
with the
buy in.
idea and you want to do something excellent, and we'll support it. You know, we'll give you some time off.
Great.
We'll give you a little bit of money or something like that to make it happen. Then the employee becomes so dedicated.
Right, they got the buy-in.
Yeah,
They bought into the
sure.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know dealer.com has a place out in California, and part of their package of benefits is you can go, they pay for skiing here and surfboarding or something else out there. So, you know, the employee knows which way to go if they're into skiing and
Whatever you
so
want.
how clever is
both.
that? Or both, exactly, right back and
I
forth.
got to put in a plug for Reinhardt Foods because
Are they good too? I
they're
don't know.
very good. They're
Oh.
big BVSR folks.
Oh, right.
But here's a real life case. They had a relatively disgruntled employee. She was there working and hourly and not happy and problematic, and they brought in a coach, and the coach sat down and talked to her, and said, "What's going on?"
Right.
Well, single mom. Okay, had to take a day off from work, unpaid, to go to the state of Vermont to get support for her kid.
Right.
Okay, Dr. Dinosaur, whatever it was. Got down there, you don't have the right paperwork. Okay, so she went back home. Excuse me. So the coach said, all right, here's the deal. You bring this, and this document to work on Wednesday. During your lunch hour, we will call up the state, because I know these people, and they did. During the lunch hour,
There you go.
they made it happen.
Right.
She turned into a model
Sure,
employee.
because they paid attention.
Okay, now this is social responsibility.
Right. That's great.
You know, so
That's
that I
great.
mean that's
It's caring about your employees.
exactly
Right.
Yeah.
exactly.
Are you involved with them, the Vermont Business?
Yeah, we're
Are you?
members.
Oh, that's
We're
great.
members, yeah.
That's good. So before we only have a few more minutes, but you formed an entity called Software Seminars. I'll give you a little plug. And what do you do with that?
Software Seminars is a corporate training, hard software training program
Great.
company. So we'd go in and I sold the company. So
Oh, you did?
I'm out,
I didn't read that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh,
But we would go into AT&T or IBM or whatever
Wow.
and teach them the latest and greatest software programs, Java programming, C++,
oh,
things like that.
that's great.
I would make more money in 3 weeks than I made a whole year at
I was going
Johnson.
to say, but you sold it. Probably
Yeah.
just too much with everything else you're doing.
Well, you know, I found that the company grew to the point where, you know, either you get rid of that company or you get rid of your job at Johnson.
Right.
And I said, you know, what do I want? Do I want money or do I want to be happy in my
Yeah,
work?
that's
And-
great.
and
Well, you
so-
obviously love what you're doing.
Yeah,
Is there
I-
anything, Jim, that we haven't touched on that you'd like to mention at all about?
I love my job.
That's good.
Monday morning, I go in and I with this big smile on my face.
That's great.
And all the other people look at me and go, oh,
There he is.
there he is again. He loves his job. We know that.
There he is.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the
Thank
show,
you.
Jim. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you
for
so
coming.
very much, Ben.
Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week, and in the meantime, keep listening beyond those sound bites.